Ain't no sunshine when she's gone.
Unforgiven is a world-renowned film that came out in
It's not
1992 and was
warm
directed by
when
Clint
she's
Eastwood.
away.
It is one of the most award-winning movies ever made and a Western
Ain't
classic
no
for the ages.
sunshine when she's
There is
gone.
symbolic and scenic
She's
value at every turn in
always
this
gone
film,
too
and
long.
countless themes such as
Anytime
self-deception,
she
redemption,
goes
honor and
away.
dignity, aging, memory, class and politics, violence, and more.
Wonder this
However,
time
the key theme
where
that
she's
drives almost every
gone.
event in the film is money. The pursuit of cash is present
Wonder
within or
if
affects
she's
outwardly
gonna
each main character
stay.
in some way. These characters include Will
Ain't
Money,
no
Clint Eastwood,
sunshine when she's
an aging
gone.
ex-murderer,
Yes,
cowboy, and
I'm
deeply thoughtful
afraid
father of
to
two,
go.
who is in dire need of money at
Anytime
any
she
cost to take care
goes
of his
away.
children. Ned Logan, played by Morgan Freeman, the only black cowboy in the film with a Native American wife, who displays mature loyalty along with a youthful dynamic despite being of age, who seems to be willing to go for an adventure to relive his youth and pursue money like he once did. However, when it finally came time to back up his claims of skill with his rifle, Ned couldn't do it and became an example of self-deception and social compensation, just like the Schofield kid about how many people he had killed. The Schofield kid, the inexperienced youth who values people based on how much money they have and how many people they have killed, and likes to project a false reality of himself to others. And lastly, Little Bill Daggett, a sadistic and ruthless town sheriff who has run into murderers and thieves himself, with an extremely unfeeling and standoffish personality, with a distaste for those who break the law for money. His sense of justice had been greatly distorted, probably by his failure to protect his past towns like Cheyenne from gun violence, which caused him to strip all new town folks of their weapons and beat them senselessly. The prostitutes who promise Ned, Will, and the Schofield kid lots of money to kill the cowboys that hurt one of the prostitutes by cutting her face with a knife. While it was true that the prostitute they made the bounty for was cut up, the extent to which she was cut up in the story that went with the bounty may very well have been the deciding factor that pushed Will Money to action, and was blown out of proportion to create a dynamic where the cowboys they were hunting had it coming with Will, Ned, and the Schofield kid, which is obviously an act of self-deception on their part.
In the movie, we see a mix of low-key lighting commonly used with scenes involving ruthless violence. In scenic images of the countryside or scenes without brutal violence, high-key lighting is often used. One example of a scene that is worth further exploring because it straddles the border between bravado-type violence and ruthless or brutal violence is a scene where Will shoots one of the cowboys involved in the crime against a prostitute from afar, injuring him only to have him die a slow death. This scene takes place in a broad daylight. Unlike the ending, where Will gets drunk and goes on a killing spree, directed at Lil Bill and his men, which takes place during a storm, and thus enveloped by low-key lighting. This could be because Will was in his senses during the killing, and also allowed the man to drink some water before he passed away, a killing done with some compassion. Color in the film is dulled in nature, with a brownish or orange tint, to really expose and emphasize the dirty and dusty Western color scheme. Along with the symbolic idea that cowboys in the lawless West are dirty with respect to their lack of morality, it provides a good metaphorical idea that the constant dust and blandness on these cowboys might hide who they really are. Urban location in this film is non-existent. Vast open Western settings with small towns and rest stops make up the large majority of the film setting. One particular location that strikes as a key marker in the film is when Will leaves his small shack and animal farm in the hillside where his kids and late wife are, along with Ned and the Schofield kid, to cross a river. This is one of, if not the only river we see in the film, and could serve to show that as they cross that river, they're going back to their old ways of lawless killing and dangerous adventures. The costumes in this movie are the basic cowboy attire, which includes your cowboy hat, tough leather pants, and worn-out shirts. Jeans, guns are a necessity for every cowboy, along with their horse. The women's clothing is predominantly open-chested, since the main women characters are all prostitutes, and they are shown to be seductive in nature through their costumes. To the viewers, at least, it appears as though the characters aren't wearing any makeup, adding to the practicality of the Wild West, people living out in the frontier, exposed to the gritty elements. The story started out with a brutal scene where a woman was cut up and then the men were simply forced to pay a fine, since the women, or prostitutes, were just damaged property to Skinny, their pimp. A bounty is placed on the guilty cowboys for an act that became blown out of proportion in nature, attracting 3 bounty hunters, Will, Ned, and the Schofield Kid, who go through pains and struggles to track the guilty cowboys and kill them both. Throughout, we notice themes like self-deception, clearly evident when our bounty hunters keep pursuing the bounty even after seeing the cut-up whore, and realize that the whore wasn't as cut up as they thought. We see the consistent theme of money, and how law and criminal activities are both affected by it. In the end, the story concludes with Will escaping relatively unharmed, with his share of the money for his children, Ned dying due to Little Bill's sadistic brutality towards him in the name of his own twisted justice, Little Bill dying to Will's ruthless revenge upon him for the killing of his dear friend, and the Schofield Kid giving up the thrill of violence and murder for a better life.